And joining us live for the first time, so happy to make his acquaintance, Mr. Praying Medic. How are you, sir?
Hey, Frank. Can you hear me?
I hear you great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Oh, perfect. So listen, the first thing I want to start with, because there's so many places to go, is your background, your actual background with coming on and being able to catch wind of what was going on with the Q phenomenon when it started in October of 2017. How were you first exposed to all this, and can you give some background on yourself, your channel, and how this phenomenon became a focal point of much of the work that you do?
I sure can, yeah. I've been a paramedic for 35 years. And I started writing books about, 2012. I've written 12 books since then. I primarily write on faith. I've written a bunch of books on healing, on hearing God's voice, things of that nature. My wife started following the QAnon thing in November when it first got going. She was listening to Tracy Beanz do some decodes, and I was kind of focusing on my own stuff. I'd hear her over at her computer listening to all this stuff, and I was kind of like half paying attention to it, half ignoring it. And I really didn't know what to think about Q. And then in December, I actually had a dream. God speaks to me a lot through dreams, and he teaches me a lot through dreams, and he gives me assignments through dreams. So I had this dream in December where I met this person who was very much like Q. In this dream, we were sitting in a room talking, and he was trying to unravel and straighten out all of my misconceptions and misunderstandings about things that I had learned from the past. I evidently had a lot of wrong understanding of things, and this guy was just correcting all of my wrong thinking about things. And then we walked out of this room and we walked into a larger room, and he started asking me these questions. Do you remember this person? Do you remember that person? And do you remember this event? How are they connected? And then he would ask another question. Do you remember this event? And do you remember who was there? Do you remember this time? How is that all connected? So he was asking me all these questions, and I recognized this speech pattern from Q, because I would listen to Tracy Beanz, and she'd be, reading the Q decodes, and Q was like, who is this person? Who's that person? What are they doing in Saudi Arabia? How is it connected? Why is it relevant? And I recognized, I was like, man, this guy sounds a lot like Q. So right at the end of the dream, this guy who was talking to me, who looked just like Mr. Miyagi, he turned to me and he said, do you understand that this is primarily about the children? And that was the end of the dream. So I knew at that point that I had an assignment to learn about Q, to understand Q, and to start decoding Q. So I have spent every week since then working on Q decodes, doing videos, doing podcasts, and doing my best to help people understand what Q's mission is, what the message is, and that's kind of how I got into it.
When did you start? Have you always heard voices? And when you...
No, dude, I was an atheist until I was 38 years old.
What happened? I mean, what was the turnaround? Was it just, did you find...
I had a very, very dramatic event that happened one night at the fire station. I was working as a paramedic, and I met God at the fire station. It was a very dramatic overnight. I mean, I wasn't just an atheist. I hated Christians. And I met God that night, and my life has been pretty radically different ever since then.
Have you ever told that story before?
Oh yeah.
Would you share it with us right now? Or is it a story that takes time? I don't want to.
It's long.
Okay.
It's long.
Well,
it's gonna look. If you want to have me back on the show sometime,
we can do
I'll
that.
come back for that. I want to talk about Q, because Q is actually dropping stuff right now.
No, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We want to do that. I wanted to get the background. Then, of course, when you say voices, I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah, it's a long story. It would take me 20-25 minutes to unpack that whole story.
We'll wait. We'll wait then. So then, the big thing here going from there. So we know the roots there. Now, talking about Q just a little bit. One more primer or so. In the last 8 weeks or so, especially, has been a pretty contentious time as far as the infighting, the so-called truth community with all this, with Q, with the origin of Q, the motive of Q, the questions of authenticity, and whereas that has kind of died down, mostly because of how intense the news cycle has been. Anybody who spent more time talking about Q with all of about whether or not Q is real or not, with all of the headlines that have been hitting us with North Korea, executive orders, what's going on at the border, so many things. So that's kind of died down. But what is it? What has gotten you to stay the course with all this? What has given you the absolute belief that there is no reason to not stay the course with this and to push through all the claims of fake? Or the other thing too is, I know that some people have said that there is verified fake posts out there, and some people who have posed as imposters, and there's been infiltrations. What has grounded you throughout all of this tumultuous, all these tumultuous chapters of the story over the last couple of months?
Two things. Number one, Q has a really good track record. And I'll just give you an example. Back on March 20th, when Allison Mack was arrested in connection with the NXIVM sex cult, most people probably remember that, Q posted that night on March 20th and said, Allison Mack is singing. She's naming big names, state and national politicians and big names in Hollywood. Okay, so Q told us on March 20th that Allison Mack was cooperating with prosecutors and was naming names and was looking for a plea deal. It wasn't until March 23rd that any of the national media got any reporting or any news that Allison Mack was cooperating with prosecutors. If you go back and look at all the news headlines, March 23rd and March 24th is when all the magazines and newspapers started reporting that Mack was cooperating and naming names. But nobody knew that until March 23rd, except Q. Q posted about it on March 20th. So if Q is a LARP, if Q doesn't have any inside information, how did Q know that? That she was cooperating with federal prosecutors? And that's just one example of 100 I could give you. Q long ago had been talking about the peace agreement that was coming with North Korea. Q was talking about North Korea in November of last year.
On North Korea, I think that's a good place to just start off there, because I want to talk about some of the things that's in your thread today for June 27th. But with North Korea, been hearing now, despite there's a lot of people that watch this show who have been apprehensive about Q. I've been somebody who has entertained all the news that comes out. We like talking about it, but I haven't been, promoting it or anything like that. There's other people that don't want to hear that think it's all nonsense, and there are other people that just are all in. So we have three different shades of people out there, but there is some interesting overlap within those people when it comes to North Korea, where many on the I don't want to hear about it, and the maybe, and the absolutely field, all those people, there's been a lot of people who have been telling me, Frank, that North Korea is not what it seems, and it was a puppet state, and the deep state was in there. They were helping build up this nuclear program out there to be able to threaten the world by proxy, to be able to bring about whatever the hell else they're trying to do for global control, this and that, and that the negotiations now. The negotiations and the summit, that they were made possible because whatever kind of deep state remnants were in North Korea were now gone, and the Kim dynasty was actually loosened up away from the control that the regime was under for so many years. And now today, less than a month after that summit, I'm getting reports even on the local news over here that consumer satellite images are showing that North Korea is ramping up their nuclear sites again. What do you think about that?
Nonsense.
Nonsense, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, when people are jumping from one news headline to the next, and they're basing their analysis and their judgment on what they're getting from the news, they're going to be all over the map. You're going to be very unstable. You're going to be switching your opinions and views all the time. You wait and see. Wait and see. I would not throw North Korea out yet. My prediction is that we'll have a fully denuclearized North Korea and a peace agreement will have an embassy in Pyongyang. North Korea will be sitting down at the table with everybody else. We'll have normalized diplomatic relations in probably 4 or 5 months. This whole thing is moving. It's moving very quickly. It moved a lot faster than anyone thought it would. And look, Q told us that Trump set everything up when he went over to China and talked to President Xi in November. And it was all already done. The meeting in Singapore was really just a formality. It was to get some signatures on some documents. There's a lot of very credible video footage and news reporting out of North Korea that Kim weeks ago destroyed the tunnels in the nuclear laboratories. So this news about Kim reinstituting his nuclear program is probably a lot of deep state propaganda, I'm guessing.
Well, that was only one. That was just one fraction of what your updates for today were. Another big thing that has happened that I thought was really interesting, and my buddy Phil was getting in touch with me late night last night to keep me abreast of everything he was finding out about what was going on at JFK Airport. Apparently, there was a mistaken, a mistake hijack. I mean, what was going on with JetBlue that somebody mistakenly gave the signal that they're being hijacked on the tarmac?
Yeah, the JetBlue pilot supposedly mistakenly told the tower he gave them a coded message that you would only give to the tower if your plane was being hijacked. And he supposedly mistakenly said that, and cops came on there and stormed the plane with guns, and you know the story.
Just like just like there was a mistaken missile alert in
Right. Well, so Q posted a picture of a JetBlue aircraft back in May, and just dropped a couple of pictures of these JetBlue aircraft, and the Anons have been guessing and guessing and guessing to figure out what the relevance of these JetBlue pictures are all about. And last night, one of the Anons noticed this thing at JetBlue at JFK and said, "Oh, hey, this is like that JetBlue picture that Q posted back in May. Probably not related." Q reposts it and says, "Coincidence? Everything we post is for a reason. Dig deeper." And then he posted some more pictures with some more information that if people keep digging, they'll figure out what the relevance of it is. Today, in my thread, Q dropped some quotes that looked like they were quotes from Peter Strzok answering questions about the text messages he was sending Lisa Page. This is in a closed hearing of the House Judiciary Committee.
About the hearing, though, real quick, did he say anything about why Peter Strzok was not under oath? I heard that in that hearing he was not under oath.
I don't know.
Okay,
don't know about that.
All right, continue.
But Q, at about, I don't know, noon today, is posting quotes from the hearing, from a closed-door hearing. Okay? And the quotes are like, you know, Strzok is saying, "Oh, the texts were taken out of context, and we didn't really mean that stuff." And then he was basically saying, "On the advice of legal counsel, I'm not going to answer that question. On the advice of legal counsel, I'm not going to answer that question." Sarah Carter just posted an article about an hour ago, it looks like, and she essentially backs up pretty much everything that Q posted, that Strzok was very evasive. He wouldn't answer many questions. He referred to his attorney's advice that he should not answer questions. DeSantis said essentially the same thing, that Strzok's testimony was unhelpful, and it's kind of ridiculous that they even went through this. So it's interesting to me that Q can take information from a closed congressional hearing, post it, and then it gets verified 4 or 5 hours later.
What I was wondering with all these hearings and the people that are being brought in now is whether or not at this time, just in different days, I'm in different moods and I look at these things from different perspectives. But when I look at it from the perspective of some of my friends and colleagues who have been assuring me, "Hey, listen, we already have everything that we need, and these people are going down. It's everything is already there." I just wondered myself if these are all these hearings, all of these little interviews and whatnot, whether they're on the record or not, are just formalities to be able to get more statements and.
They're formalities. They're formalities. And Q has suggested that the Strzok and Page texts are just scratching the surface. The real damning information is going to come out when they start digging into text messages between Andrew McCabe, Loretta Lynch, Comey, Obama, Hillary, Valerie Jarrett, and all of those people. They've got their text messages, they've got their emails, they've got their private Gmail comms, they've got all that information. And when that stuff comes out, that is going to be the really damning information. Q has suggested that they actually talked about possible assassination plots on Trump in those text messages. So the stuff that we're getting right now in the Inspector General report and these text messages of the Strzok and Page, they're really innocuous. They're not going to go in. They're not. That's not the big thing. Rosenstein is hiding all of the arsenal of information that the NSA has and that Trump has, and he can only hide it for so long. Eventually, he's either going to be impeached or he's going to have to give up the information.
Talking about hiding, I know that in your thread here, you also brought up the recent references to James Comey and Julian Assange. And
Right.
last night, I spent a good amount of time on that with Black Conservative Patriot, and we were talking about the John Solomon article from The Hill and a little bit more of the commentary that some of my friends had been putting out there and the pieces we were putting together. Talking about slow walking information and trying to be obstructionist in your own way. I mean, that right there, is there any more outside of what we learned about James Comey and Mark Warner pretty much saying no thanks to both protecting the CIA from a fully unredacted Vault 7 leak and saying no thanks to some kind of technological proof or evidence that the source of the DNC leaks were not Russians or wasn't Moscow and where it came from. Very interesting that they said no thanks to protecting the CIA in any degree and no thanks to disproving the already very strong, reliable Russian narrative.
Right. Well, the last thing that Comey wanted was anyone talking about where those emails came from, because they did not come from the Russians. Assange has repeatedly said in his multiple interviews with Sean Hannity that the emails that were taken from the DNC did not come from a state actor, did not come from Russia. So the narrative that this was a Russian hack, Assange has already said it didn't happen. We pretty much know that it came from Seth Rich. Seth Rich downloaded the emails, put them on a thumb drive, gave them to WikiLeaks or Assange, and that's how they got them. And that's all going to come out. Look, in July.
Yeah, I think it was Seymour
In
Hersh.
July, we have this lawsuit. The DNC went and sued Trump, the Trump campaign. They sued WikiLeaks, Assange, Paul Manafort, Russia. They sued everybody. And in the discovery phase, when all the evidence is produced, we're going to find out. The public is going to find out what happened. They're going to have to produce a server, and there will be a forensic examination of the server. And Q has been telling us that when the server is investigated, it's going to blow the whole thing wide open. And that's probably we're probably going to start hearing about that in July. Comey and Loretta Lynch and Obama, the last thing they want is that information about that server to come out, because it's going to be proven that it was not Russia, that it was actually Seth Rich. And then you have this big thing about what happened to Seth Rich. So.
Yeah, that's the big one. And of course, you're talking about Sean Hannity meeting with Julian Assange. Well, Sean Hannity was also on the Seth Rich trail for a good amount of time there, and then all of a sudden had the dogs called off out of respect to the family. So,
Right.
so in the same frame, he was hot on the trail of the person who not only Assange has been hinting at, but he was also offering $10,000 rewards for any kind of information that led to the capture of the person who killed Seth Rich. You know, so
Yeah. Well, Q has been telling us for a long time it was an MS-13 hit. So I'm guessing those MS-13 guys who hit Seth Rich, they're dead. Their bodies are in a river right now. There aren't going to be any witnesses talking about that. But, there's more information coming out.
I'll tell you something, man. What do you think it's with the demeanor now? I know we're sitting here, we're exchanging notes, and we're and we're talking like two buddies on the back porch, having a cigar, just chilling out. But when I'm thinking about the gravity of all of the crimes that we're laying out here, and all of the people involved and what they were doing and the conversations they might be having and the information that has been collected, because listen, all of us have been dropped on by the NSA. The NSA has to have everything on anybody and on everybody. So I have to imagine that if you're hot in the trail somewhere and you have people who are looking for the right things, you're going to be able to find whatever the hell you want eventually. What I don't understand is, with all of the certainty that we get out of the Q drops and all of the certainty we get out of people who are covering this that actually that don't even refer to Q, but they do all of their own open source investigations on things, there's a lot of certainty about who's going down, that is going to happen. There's nothing that's going to stop it. If people are so certain, then what does that tell you about the subjects, like the Loretta Lynch's, the Barack Obamas, Hillary Clinton's? I mean, we haven't even talked about the Awan case, what's going on there. But there's so much calm, seemingly so much calm, on the side of the perpetrator, where the people that we are waiting for the hammer to drop on top of, they're touring the world, they're yucking it up, they're not wearing ankle bracelets like everybody was suspecting for a while there. Everybody's just been kind of chilling and doing their thing. What do you think? You think that is just really good acting, or
it's really good acting? Are you aware of the 35,000 sealed indictments?
Yeah, I didn't know it was. I didn't know it's up to 35, but I knew I was counting.
They're adding 5,000 a month, so. I think it's really good acting. I think that if you look at the way Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and a lot of the Democrat leadership they're kind of freaking out publicly. They're going to this, we have to go and assault Trump. We have to assault his staff. We have to, and this other liberal guy came out the other day and said that the new plan is we're not supposed to make Trump feel bad. We're not going to attack Trump anymore. We have to attack his supporters.
Donnie
we
Deutsch.
have to make people feel horrible for voting for and supporting Trump. So these tactics by the people on the left, to me, objectively, it just looks like these people are scared. It looks like they don't know what to do. They don't have a plan other than to attack and vilify and demonize Trump and his supporters. That, to me, that screams that these people are guilty. Look what's happening in Hollywood with De Niro and all these other Hollywood people who are just freaking out about Trump and threatening Melania and threatening Sarah Huckabee Sanders and all those other people. Why is Hollywood freaking out so much about Trump? Because 3 or 4 years ago, Trump was a friend to all of those people. They have figured out that Trump is coming after them. And they know Allison Mack has been talking about the sex cult. They know that a lot of these people in Washington are going down. No. They sense it. And if you look at some of the behavior of these people, some of them are kind of telegraphing their fear.
You just put it into perspective for me for a little bit, because it is kind of interesting there, too, because I always wonder, as much information that gets around, I try to read the faces of the people who are going to supposedly be the targets of all these indictments and all that. And I think about the biggest fish. And I think a lot of people, actually, now that I think about it, on the left have actually been complaining that Barack Obama has not been around enough. He's actually been laying pretty low. It's the other ones that are going on book tours, and James Comey and John Brennan. Everybody's trying to play up this whole noble type of this role, trying to play this noble role of winning in the court of public opinion. But now that you mention just how virulent everybody at the bottom has been working for them, almost like they're the brown shirts or the red guard, going out there and doing all the bidding and talking about how, it's going to be 1970s style bombing again, like the Weather Underground, and of course already trying to chase people out of restaurants. That whole Red Hen restaurant story with Sarah Sanders the other day. apparently that was only half of the story. Did you know that after Sarah Sanders left the Red Hen, the owner of the Red Hen followed them across the street to another restaurant and continued the protest?
I did hear that.
That was very underreported. So I get what you're saying is very, very interesting stuff there, man. Now, what else about what else going on today? Cutting edge stuff that is really what has got you really focused. What subjects? What drops in particular? Is there anything else that we should be keeping our eye on in your opinion right now in the interim?
So in addition to these, drops that Q will put out that in anywhere from 3 days to a week to 2 or 3 months, there's validated that Q knew stuff ahead of time before it came. In addition to that, I receive a lot of dreams from God where God has been showing me specific things, issues, subjects that Q is going to post about in the future. Believe it or not, I have a friend who had a dream last night. He sent it to me on a message where he saw me giving instruction to someone that looked like it was the Q team. Based on dreams that I've had, they were taking points. They were taking some pointers from me based on dreams that I had. Oh gosh, 3 or 4 nights ago, I had 2 dreams. And the dreams are about powerful, wealthy people who are trying to liquidate their assets. They have a lot of money in real estate, stocks and bonds, and different assets. And they're in a very sneaky way that is very hard to detect. They were trying to liquidate those assets and get that money out of those investments. The first night I had a dream where I saw them doing this. The second night I had the same dream where Q was posting about it. So there's something going on, I think, with these people where they know that the jig is up and they're trying to get their assets out of these investments. I don't know what they're going to do with the money, but that's just one of the things that I think is coming down the road. I have a lot of dreams about Q. God gives me dreams where he shows me things that Q is going to post about, shows me how Q's platform is going to continue growing, explosive growth. Like in 6 months, Q is going to be bigger than InfoWars and Jerome Corsi and WikiLeaks combined.
You think
that's one of the things that I'm seeing is whenever Q comes up, a lot of people just kind of gravitate toward Q, and now you're seeing WikiLeaks and Alex Jones. They've been attacking Q and they've been criticizing Q because there's some professional jealousy. They don't like the attention that Q is getting.
Well, I've seen that. I've gotten that kind of a vibe there too. But you've done. Listen, I gotta say, it's very, very. For me, I would be. I like the quality of work that you do and the conversations that you've been able to conduct and the actual work that you put together. It's very, sometimes I gotta say, it's amazing to see the growth that you've had, especially because you actually do incorporate these dreams into the way that you interpret what's going on in the world. Only because that can get very Miss Cleo like for a lot of people. Do you ever get any kind of?
Oh yeah.
I mean, because it is out there, man. It does.
Yeah, people who are prophetic in nature, they understand dreams. They understand how revelation and visions and dreams and things of that nature. They love it. But a lot of people, when they're like, oh, he's going to talk about another stupid dream. A lot of people who just don't understand what dreams actually are, they get totally turned off by the dreams. And I do tend to incorporate the dreams a lot into my my videos and my threads. And some people like it, and some people don't.
Well, hey,
and it is what it is.
Either way,
I'm not going to change.
It's unique. It's definitely unique. It's something I've never seen before. And once again, I can't wait to have you back on to talk about more about your roots and the experience at the Firehouse. Want to do that for sure. Do you have time for a couple of questions I got here from some audience members?
Heck yeah.
Okay. Well, here's the first one. Q had some very strong words concerning the Peter Strzok testimony behind closed doors today. You had just mentioned that. Do you believe that either the forced removal of Peter Strzok or his indictment will start the dominoes tumbling that will move very fast after that?
That is a really good question. My understanding is that Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Bruce Orr, and people of that nature were all cooperating witnesses. And people get upset because they don't understand how this whole system works. But when you work inside an agency like DOJ or FBI, if you get it caught up in an internal investigation and they think that you've been guilty of something and there's a bigger plot going on, they can either charge you and then they can fire you, or they can recruit you to be a cooperating witness and then you give information on the other players in the scheme. If you sign the agreement to cooperate as a witness, you're essentially looking for a lighter sentence. That's why you cooperate. It's a sentencing plea. My understanding is that Strzok and Page and Bruce Orr and several other people who were not fired from their jobs, they stayed there because when you're a cooperating witness, you're basically given a desk job. When they need you to testify, when they need to get a deposition, when they need information from you, they yank your chain, you come over, you give them a deposition, you write out what you know, you tell them everything that they want, and if at any point you refuse to cooperate and tell them what they want to know, your deal is done, they fire you, and you get charged with the full penalty of your crimes. So Strzok and Page are small players in this whole thing. Comey, Lynch, Holder, Obama, Hillary, they're the big players. They're not going to get any deals. Those people will get no deals at all. Strzok and Page and Bruce Orr are being used to get information on the larger players. So this is essentially the biggest racketeering bust that our country has ever seen. You're probably not going to see any of these people arrested until they're all arrested at once. John Huber, U.S. Attorney in Utah, Sessions has told us for a long time, John Huber and his staff of like 400 attorneys, they have been working on, they have grand juries impaneled, they've been hearing testimony. They are working on the prosecution of all of those people, and it'll probably come out all at once.
And
I don't think you're going to have any lead up to it. It's just going to be boom. They're going to unseal a couple thousand indictments, and those people are going to be arrested by U.S. Marshals, taken in, perp walked, and that's going to be it.
I mean, do you think this is going to happen before November? Do you think that we're looking at a crescendo of the November 11th military parade being a major, just a major moment after all of the big fireworks have gone off?
Yep, I think the Awan brothers case is scheduled for its final hearing
on July 3rd.
July 3rd. And so that has a potential to be a powder keg because there's a lot of Democrat representatives involved that hired the Awans, didn't do background checks on them, and allowed them to steal information, sell it to the Pakistani intelligence, and steal money and everything else. So that's sitting there waiting, and that is going to seriously crater the D's for the midterms. I also think these arrests of a lot of these people will probably come before November. I don't have a date on that. I think it'll happen before November. November 11th Veterans Day Parade is going to be a big deal.
I hope you're right about the Awan case, because as of right now, what I've been reading, the July 3rd date looks like it's going to be like we're talking about plea agreement proceedings. It doesn't. Right. So hopefully there is something there. Hopefully it's not a big letdown. But there's one other thing I want to ask you here, too. Another question I have. Q keeps very serious tone as he talks about what's going on in Iran right now. What's your take on the situation in Iran?
Okay. Well, do you think it's a coincidence that there is essentially a grassroots revolution going on in Iran, while at the same time Bolton is setting up a summit with Trump and Putin?
It seems like
they're connected.
It seems like it's an orchestra is being conducted right now, to be honest.
They're connected. So the same way that Trump worked with President Xi to leverage a peace agreement with North Korea, Trump is going to work with Putin to leverage a peace agreement and denuclearization of Iran. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Yes, they do. They have two nuclear weapons facilities, one in Iran and one in northern Syria. Netanyahu produced all the evidence of that stuff about a month and a half ago. He did it publicly. Mossad has been inside of Iran's facilities for 2 years getting evidence. So Trump is working on a game plan toward denuclearizing Iran after the people overthrow the mullahs. They'll have democratic elections. And then Trump has been putting economic pressure on Russia for the last year to get Putin in a leveraged position where he can go to a meeting and say, look, this is what I want. I will remove the economic sanctions. We'll play nice with you. We'll remove the tariffs. We'll let your goods come and go. But here's my thing is we have to fix what's wrong with Iran and Syria. And I think that will also happen by November.
What we are looking at here, and you want to, I always say before, with all of the doom and gloom that people put on out there about the world, about what is never going to change, what has always been around, and conflict and war and turmoil, and now we're in this technological age where war is not just waged on the battlefield, it's waged in the digital space, and there's all these new fears and all that stuff, and all the things we keep in mind, and all of the reality checks we try to give to ourselves as to not go and get taken away by delusions of grandeur or anything like that. I tell you one thing, man, if there's anything that I have loved about all of this stuff, it's just the idea and the hope that all of these pieces can fit together and that there really could be sustainable, real solutions. Even if it's just a real starting point. That's always been my favorite part about all of this, is just the fantasizing and the visualization practice of seeing a world that makes a little bit more sense, seeing a world that's a little bit less violent, a little bit more self-governing, a little bit more sovereign. That's the most exciting thing about all of this. And thank you so much for coming on and spending so much time with me putting this together. I know that this is just the tip of the iceberg, but we've been linked together on Twitter for some time now, and I'm glad that we finally got around to hanging out.
Yeah, me too, man. It's been great talking to you. And yeah, you're right. It's the thing that I like about what Q is posting is Q is giving people hope for the first time in like 50 years that the world is actually going to get better, that we can end these wars, that people can live in peace. People need hope, and Q is giving them hope, and I don't think it's false hope. I think we're really going to see a lot more peace in the world than we've ever seen in the last 100 years, probably. Absolutely,
and it's got people turning off their televisions. The only reason why, when the different people that I have, the circles that I roll in, the only thing that people ever share with each other are small little clips from CNN or MSNBC or Fox in order to hold up against something that they have personally researched and an idea or a theory that they're personally proposing. I've seen, people have been more and more inclined to study history. They've been more and more inclined to looking into their constitutions, looking into their state constitutions, seeing how agencies work together, independent or interdependent of each other. It seems like it is kicked off above all things, which is why I'll never complain about it, even though cult of personality is a thing that we as a species do get involved in from time to time. You have to look out for that. But I will never complain. I will never complain when you get people interested in doing their own research and their own educating, and it's been really awesome. I mean, for a while there, you had people tracking flight paths. I mean, to see what people were doing and to the extent that they were doing to step outside of their comfort zone and get into another mode of thinking, that right there, just teaching people how to think critically and question again, that's what we got into such a trouble for so long. We lost the ability to question even the basic things. That is probably the biggest change that is coming to our culture is as the mainstream media implodes and broadcasters like you and I start sharing our message. And my thing really is I don't want to tell people what to think. That's why when I do my threads on Twitter, I post links to articles, links to different resources, links to video, link to this, a link to that. Go do your own research.
Go find out the truth for yourself. I don't want to be the one to tell people what to think or what's true. That's what Q does. Q gives people all these questions so they can go do their own research and come to their own conclusions. We have been listening to the mainstream media brainwash us for decades. And when the mainstream media is toast, part of this revolution is going to require people to think for themselves and to do their own research. And you're absolutely right.
My man, Praying Medic. You know, I've only said your name successfully on this show maybe about 10 times in saying that hey, Praying Medic is coming on the show, but you have no clue how many times off the air I have said Praying Mantis, and it just comes it just comes out. I can't help it, but I'm glad I got to tell you about that. And thanks for being on. I can't wait to have you back, man. You've been fantastic.
I would love to come back.
All right, have a good one, and I'll make sure that I get you a copy of this highlight and anything like that, and anything you ever need from me or this show, you just let me know.
Is it okay if I upload this to YouTube on my channel? Because I know people would like it.
By all means, man. Go right ahead.
Right on.
All right. Have a good one. Take care.
All right. Catch you later.
Bye.